Okay, right, code review time. Let's have a look at this code. What do we got here? Right, so explain, what are we looking at?
This just creates a request to our API.
Okay, so it's simple API request.
Yes.
Good name. So is a new request and it's a requirement, and so you pass it this and a string that's post and a string that's the user login and token. Okay. So you get the parameter out of that request. So you set it to being an email, and the password is set there, which you get passed in as strings. Yep. And then you execute it with passing it something that's an error that's going to be changed, because that's a. So I assume that this exists. You didn't? Did you write this, or is this?
Yeah, I wrote this.
This execute.
Yes.
You wrote the execute. So. And you execute that with. Oh, so that execute actually takes. So this bracket opens out.
Yeah, it's a lambda.
Yeah, it's a lambda, right. Yeah, so the execute's a lambda.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay. so it's a big lambda function. Interesting approach. So you've gone down the lambda route. So you've got an error that can come back, the result that can come back, and a status that can come back. Okay. Or so you then have, oh, this is the status is what gets returned.
Maybe a constant.
Yeah. Okay. So so that's the -1's okay. But that could be changed into a constant. But yeah, so -1's an interesting one, right? So often you would consider -1 as an error code, as a reasonable error code to have. Though for Linux and for Unix systems, often 0 is the no error code, right? And then every other number is an error code. So sometimes 1, 2, 3 are all different error codes. So they're positive error codes rather than negative error codes. So, so yeah, sometimes it's just best to have, like, name it as a constant what kind of error it is. But you have -1, it's okay, and so you get those. You give it this and null. So these are error messages that go out. This show error out to the user.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. Wrong email and password. If you get either of those statuses. Okay. So that looks like a reasonable way of handling that. And you've got, if you get something back, so the status is anything other than -1, then you process here. JSON object, turn the result into a JSON object, tokenize. Yes, so you get token from get token to string, and then get username. My C background, so token is the authentication token. Yeah. It's partly because tokenizing a string is what kind of this, like, so in C you could tokenize, which would you take a string and you tokenize it on space, and that would get all of the strings that accept the white space, and so it turned those into tokens. So tokenization is something that exists in C, but it also it's an authentication token, so it's a perfectly reasonable name. So that's fine. So you save the token, show home. Yeah, no, that looks perfectly consistent. Yep, it says you've got the small errors, get the token. There's a comment there, which is fine. So yep, no, it all looks fine. It's quite a long lambda, so it's quite a big lambda function to have done that way. And that comes back to like a discussion on how you do programming, right? So if everyone on the team is comfortable with lambda functions, then lambda functions are fine, right? For some people, they're harder to maintain, so because you have to understand lambda functions, and not everyone does. But So that would be only fair with such a large Lambda function, is that it might confuse potential other developers. But so where's the end of the Lambda function? Is it just how long does this actually go? So I assume it ends the else here. Looks like that should be, yeah. So it looked like it was about to end. Question?
Why are you using like 4 if statements or the F statements and 4 lines instead of 1 switch?
A real reason?
Okay.
I would have a reason. This if is not like these ones. These two are on status.
Yeah.
This is on error. So yeah, so this is actually explicitly testing a different thing than the other ones. So you couldn't have this in as a switch statement because these are both testing on the status return, right? And this is returning on the error return. You could have changed it so that error and status were a single item, right? So
yeah, thought about that.
Yeah, so that would be one refactoring. Would be say, well, this looks like a switch. How do I turn all of these into the same thing?
Yeah.
Maybe status should have 0 for everything's fine and or a number for anything else, right? So yeah, but yeah, so I mean that would be a refactoring. It's an interesting question, right? As a code review, as a company, do you keep them separate or do you reuse status and error to be the same thing? Traditionally in computer science we have done a lot of that, right? You do find like error as just another status indicator. I'm mixed about this. I kind of like there to be a very explicit error that is an error thing, that is a boolean that says error or no error. Right? And then status is what is the state of the system, right? So I don't like the optimization that says, you know, you could refactor it and say status, negative statuses are errors, and positive status are success, and then you use the number within the positive or negative to tell you what kind of error or what kind of success it is, right? But that means that you just get this one number back, and then you have to know, oh, negative is error, positive is success. And that's kind of an extra piece of cognitive machinery. Whereas here I can read and go, oh, error. If that's true, there was an error. So like semantically I'm okay with the added complexity of 3 things and an if statement, rather than kind of compressing it. So that's why I think this is perfectly reasonable. But it could be a switch. Any other thoughts on that?
Just a separate thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is an HTTP response, right?
Yeah.
Is it possible to combine the error and the relative status?
I'm pretty sure it is, actually.
Because you have the HTTP response codes. Wouldn't they tell you consistently anyway?
That's true.
So if that's set to something else than 200, then there's an error or something.
Yeah. So
Just remove the error entirely.
Well, there's actually one case where if you don't have internet, then you get an error.
yeah, but that should probably be a not found. Oh, actually, I suppose it depends on when the tool you're using how it gives you the error back, right? It could preempt the HTTP error by just saying no, I can't even connect the internet. I'm not going to even fire the request, right? So it might throw an exception. The library might throw an exception before it tries, so it doesn't give you
else the app crashes if you don't check for it before.
Right. So yeah, it's got a So yeah, some of them will do weird things if you just don't even if you have no internet at all.
Yeah.
It'll crash if you try and send a request. So, okay. Yep. No, that's good. I'm reasonably happy. Any other thoughts on this code?
Just that if you have a lot of show error that has to call back to null,
Yeah.
I would maybe create another method that you can avoid that extra null.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these look pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So
And if that's the case for
Yeah, we only
a
use
lot
it in some
other
places.
cases, then
When the user
Tab's okay. Then you get callback.
So you get a callback here
Yeah.
if you put up an OK.
But we only need it in some cases.
Right. Though, so what, like the design pattern of having an error message that says, you know, deleting all the files, OK.
There's no back.
Like, there's no cancel or OK, it's just OK. I always feel a bit cheated by that. I think, oh God, no, I don't want to click OK. So, do you have multiple callbacks functions here? Is this a list, or is it you get a single callback from your
we have
show
multiples.
error?
We have multiples depending on the message.
Yeah, so you can have it as a list
Yeah.
of functions that. So you can have OK or cancel or.
Yeah. I don't think it's defined by the function itself, depending on because you decide the text when you call the function.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on where you call it, you will send the strings.
Yep.
And then the functionality will be in the function itself.
Yep.
So it just takes its parameters.
Right. So it has a callback function, and then within that callback function, you'd have various options for the different strings. Right. Okay. Different buttons. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could. So one option here would be you'd have this, you know, show modal error or something like that, where you say this is just a modal error, it's just a pop-up, or a toast error where there isn't any options. So you could create a specific name for an error message that is with no options.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that instead of just show error, you could like show modal error or show message error.
So just different functions in the message class.
Yeah, and just add into the message class an
Yeah.
extra function, and it also then tells you more about what's going on. That this is intentionally left null. In a sense. Yeah. Okay. Other code? Any other comments? Yeah.
Is there, I don't remember actually, but is there default values for parameters? No. And then you can set the default. There's no defaults.
There.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't used Java enough recently. I used to use Java a lot, but it's been a while. So. Okay.
Another one here. No, that's not that great. It should be that one, or is it on great? Siden andre både du satte her.
Quite a lot of files. There's quite a lot of files in your project. It seems like a relatively rich project for your bachelor's that you've done. It's got quite a lot of content.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit. Så där den här.
So I think our students are actually producing quite a lot of code now in their bachelor's.
Gallery, nice.
I think sort of 5-10 years ago there was much less code in the bachelor's.
Ja, så det har kanske inte lika relevant som den var.
I think that's one of the reasons behind that is that they have been programming a lot more when they come to the bachelor. And so
Yeah, they can get more done because we've got a background in it. Yeah. So, I'm also reasonably pleased with the amount of work that our students do. Certainly the amount of programming they do. One of the other comments that our externals have had is that UVic students tend to be willing to do things, whereas like Trondheim and Oslo students tend to be more of a, oh no, like where should I do that? Like what should I do that in? Rather than like if you give them a problem, they go, okay, well what framework? Where's the code? Where's the bit that I add? And it's going, no, you write the framework. Like, find it out. And UVic students are more likely to go, okay, I'll start looking for stuff then, rather than having to wait for someone to tell them, oh, you insert a line here of code. So, but, yep, okay.
We had one big one, but we have refactored it. It's not that interesting in the long run, but the solutions to it was quite obvious. You just had to split it up and just organize it.
Yep. So yeah, that process of refactoring, that's why in the professional programming course, for part of the documentation, I want you to show me like it before,
Yeah.
And then show me the refactored and explain why you did it.
Yeah.
Right? And that way, point me to it, and that's that understanding of why refactoring is important and identifying good and bad code. So, yep. So if you've already identified it and moved on, that's great. One of the challenges we're having with our master students is because I created diverse groups with defined roles, they've had very few conflicts, and we have this expert and teamwork course which is about conflicts, because you're supposed to put people in groups and they're supposed to have conflict, and they haven't had conflict. So it's kind of, what do we write about? Because we're supposed to write about, how we resolve the conflicts in the group, and it's kind of, but we didn't have conflicts in the group. Do we have to make up conflicts? So do we have to make up bad code just so I can then write it again? So like as you were saying with the mobile course, once you've been thinking about good code, you often start writing your code better from scratch, and so you don't have quite so much refactoring work to do. And I think, so Jason, one of my who's been here and seen you guys a couple of times, he finds the difference between like novice programming code is that we can usually improve 2 or 3 times the speed for novice code, but for well-written code maybe 30% improvement because it's already reasonably good. So okay, where are we?
Kanskje så snakke om det programmet jeg hadde med titel. Jeg vet ikke hvis vi får klart det godt nå. Titelen, altså til produktene, som vi ikke får tak i.
These comments that are in here,
Så det er jo et logisk program. Yeah.
Did you write them first and then fill in the thing, or are these comments that were written after you'd written the code? Just, I'm interested in your process of how these 2 comments come in here.
Well, we actually don't have a system for it. I usually write my comments when I write the code there, but not for the function itself. So, those types of comments I personally write on the go, but not.
But when you have a function header, a big function header,
those I write at the end usually.
Yeah, okay. When you're going back and reflecting on what parameters you have, but these ones you're saying, right, so I'm doing this right now, and I'll just say what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yep. So one option is to look at your code just from its comments, and see, if you're developing from comments, it's a bit like test-driven development. It's comment-driven development where you write the comment and then write the code.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that one's better than the other. It's just a different approach. Yep. Okay. Apart from that, is there anything in here that's interesting or sticks out?
Because we have had a problem that I don't know if we are able to explain it properly, but it's more about our master itself than the code, but it's a logical problem because it's something we cannot do because I don't know if we have time for that. It depends how good we can explain it. But it is kind of related to how you structure and show things,
right?
Depending on the information you have.
So often there can be kind of a circular thing where you don't know what you're showing until you've got it, and then you can't know what you've got until you've shown it. So, so you can have some interesting issues on like processing data.
Yeah, because we are downloading a ton of products because we need products. And we need a title of the products, a good title for the product that describes the product. The problem is that the third party we use has the data for the product divided. So they have a simple version and they have an extended version. So we get all the simple data for every product and we store that. And that has a link to the extended product. So when we make a search, we want to search for the title that is in the extended. But the extended is too big for us to download. So when we use the small data for the product, we cache the data from the link, and then we have access to all the data for the product. Our problem is that when we make the search for the product itself, we have the bad title. So the search is bad based on the title, because the title is bad. And we cannot access the good title before we have the link. And to get the link, you first have to do the search. So the search itself is bad because the title is bad. But when we get the link, then we can get the good title. And there's too much data to collect on the big product information than the small one, and we actually do not know how to solve that because it's millions of products.
Right. So I have some ideas. As a group, what do you think the solution for that would be?
Stored and how do you fetch it? Is it through an API or some?
We have a script to import the products from XML files.
And it's stored on our own database.
Yeah.
Right. And so both the big and the small are stored in your database?
Just the small one. The
Just
big one
the
is
small.
too big.
Too big.
Those are
Yep.
individual files we have to download individually.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the small one has a link to the big one. So
Right.
we have a link.
Yeah. Okay. So my first solution to that
Yeah.
is to build a cache, a secondary cache yourself, where if those products don't change very quickly, right? What you do is you just run up a cache generating program, and it goes through and it extracts all the names of the things you might want to search, and it just goes through all of those offline beforehand. Like now, you set it running for 3 days or whatever, to go through and extract the things that you might want to search and store them in an appropriate way. Right? Now, if you were doing a high-end computer science side of this, you'd actually save them in a trie, and by letter. So as I searched, I'd put in a letter, and it would then go through the tree of all titles with that first letter, and give you then a drop down. So as you typed, you would see the potential titles that you could find, right? And it would have pre-cached all of that because it knows the title is the thing I search most often for, so I'm going to optimize this data structure specifically for searching on title. And yes, it will take me 3 days to build that data structure, but I'll do that once, have that just as a single file loaded in, and have that link to my short description, which then has a link to the long description. Right, so I would manually pre-process that.
Yeah.
Right, so that would be my solution to it. If they then change their products in some relatively frequent way, I would probably have an overnight process on a server somewhere,
Yeah.
a cron job that would rebuild that index on a daily basis.
Yeah, because I think they do, because they have, because they get their information from other manufacturers, and they have different qualifications on the quality of the data itself. And I think there's 3. It's unverified, and then the manufacturer, and then there's them. They have verified it itself, and they do that all the time.
Yep. Okay. So yeah. So I would probably have a search structure specifically for string searching that was really fast, and I would just have a cron job that would rebuild at the end of each day that particular file, and then you'd load that file on startup, or if you were again worried about data traffic, you would say, this is my hash for the file. You send the server, hey, this is my index file, and the server says, yes, I've got the same hash, don't worry. Or, oh, my hash has changed, right, here's that file with its updates. Yeah. So that would be how I would kind of set that up. And you guys know, like tree-based fast searching, you can understand. So
Some of it.
yeah, so the idea is if you're doing a data structure with tree-based fast searching, each character is, so if you've got your 26 first characters, each of them has a link to all the strings that are under that first character. So as I hit a T, so if I hit what that will be about E, an E will have everything all the strings that start with E will have been referenced from under this structure, and then that will have a structure with each of the potential like L, C, X underneath it. And so the idea is you can actually build up a very fast search strategy based on the characters, and as I type them, it immediately finds all of the potential strings that it could be from underneath. Okay? So the idea is that as you type, I hit A, it shows me like suddenly a list of all the things, because it goes up. Everybody listed under this starts showing the first 5 on the linked list, and then here's another letter, and it says, all right, now I just want this subset of that, and so it quickly forms a fast search for as you type for particular strings. Right? So so you don't actually search through the entire list. You have an index lookup into the list that gives you what you need. And there are various ways of doing that even more cleverly, so that you don't just look for the first letter, you look for wherever this appears in the string. So there's a bunch of really fast index lookups that you can do. It's an improvement. I wouldn't put it in your code at this stage, because that would be too much. But there are ways to make that really fast, and if you're looking to improve user experience, that's the sort of thing you could do. But that would be my best suggestion, would be precation.
It's a comment. Android has a cache API built in, so you can just search up for caching on Android developer. Some pretty good guides on caching.
Yeah, I think because their problem is they've got so many files, it's that 'cause you don't want to use it, have to do that. That's why I'm thinking you have a server that does it and just generates a file.
Yeah, the backend.
Well, the problem itself is that the title that comes with the small data for the product it can be good, it can be bad, it can be a number, so it can be totally useless. So there's really no way. So our search function, it works most times. You get mostly the relevant data, but the problem is that there's just so many products that has been badly defined in the small data, but fully it has the full description in the title, and we need that one.
In the actual,
But first we need to do the search.
Yeah.
And we don't get enough relevant products to then get the...
Yep, so I think you're just going to have to do a crawler that crawls through them all and extracts it as a cached file.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... have any of you written a web crawler? You've written a web crawler?
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun activity to do, actually, is to...
Yeah, I'm a little frustrating.
Yeah, but it's how I learned Java, right? So the first time I did Java, the first program I wrote was a web crawler to crawl betting websites to look for odds, to see if I could find odds ratios where I could bet in a foreign country and in my country and have a positive outcome, so I could bet and always win. Never found it. I think they probably did the same thing to check that you couldn't do this, otherwise, someone would bet a huge amount of money and always win. But so no, running a web crawler is nice, because you get some of that experience of, oh, wait a minute, I can just set up a cron job that's going to crawl through a massive amount of data, cache some stuff, look for certain things, and you'll find that if any server you have, there'll be a bunch of universities that have web crawlers that will crawl over whatever web page you have.
Yeah, because the title is at the top, so we only need that part.
Yeah.
If you have that part, then we can do the search.
Right. Yeah.
Then all will be good.
Yeah. I think that would probably be an offline. Yeah. That's an offline nightly.
But it's so annoying, because they should just have it with a small one, because they usually just work with other sales places, so they don't need that many products. So they don't have to download that many products. They only need the data for the products they sell.
So, data quality, right? So it comes into an area of data quality. Rachel's job, my wife's job at Otago, was basically ensuring data quality of the alumni database, right? So, because they had, every student was a row, was a product. And you've got their address, and their previous address, and their postal address, their parents' address, their phone number, their email addresses. So you've got lots of data, but the quality of that data was quite important, right? Because so the classic one for them was the university would get in trouble when it would send the, hey, we'd like you to donate to the university letters to dead people, right? Because particularly when the parents of a graduate had rung up, told the university that their child had died and they didn't want any more letters, and you keep sending letters to dead people asking them for money, and it upsets the parents, right? And that's a data quality issue, right? Because they had told you that something had changed and then you hadn't updated your database. Data quality, is a massive issue in the industry, just as you guys are having to deal with. Ways of pointing out and cleaning up data, it's actually a service that you could provide to the business you're working with, is you could actually write a little scraper that would go through and check short name and long name and identify where there were names that were bad or inconsistent, or actually do some data integrity checking on their system and say, hey, we were having some trouble with our search, so we wrote a data integrity checker for you. And now when you get a new product, you can run our data integrity checker, and it'll say, it'll flag the ones where it's a mismatch between the good title and the short title. So you offer it as a, hey, look, we've helped you. So yeah, it's something that's worth looking at actually having as a checker. Particularly if you know what a good one looks like and what a bad one looks like.
Yeah.
Then yeah, you can write a test for it.
Yeah, but we can actually do that, I think.
Yeah.
Because, especially the numbers, because usually the product, the title itself is, you have a name, the specifications, the color. So you have something to look for.
Yep.
But some products just have the, in the small title, they have just manufacturer's name sometimes. That's all you have.
Right, which isn't particularly useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd write an integrity checker, and it could flag the entries that didn't follow some pattern. Right. It's a bit like a linter for your code. It's something that doesn't follow a pattern.
Yep.
So yeah. And then you say to them, look, this is why our search does this. If all of your entries were good and not flagged yellow by our linter, then our search would be perfect. So you fix that, everything's sweet. So yeah, make it someone else's problem. But yeah, okay, that's what I do. So yeah, back to code. I think we'll have a, because I was going to say something about the code that was up here. I think we'll have that moved. That wasn't, I don't know, wasn't the code I was looking at just before.
Maybe it was here. Just remembering the ones we.
Yeah, no, I think yes. So yeah, so it was actually. So now go back to the code you just had. Maybe it was. I'm just trying to remember because I was looking at something. Yes, the null returns. Okay, yes. So it is this null return here. So if view by ID is not null, and if saved instance state is not null, return. That's so. So you're saying here that there is saved data, and so you return.
That's weird.
Because like, if one of the, if this is saving data, I understand. Like this. So find fragment. Two not nulls would normally in my cognitively say it's not null and it's not null. I have something. I should do something. Whereas here, like I have stuff and then I return. So if this,
I don't know why that's there.
yeah. So this one concerns me because it feels like this might be an error.
Yeah.
Because unless this was saving the instance, which it creates a new instance and adds the token. Here it's saying if. So where does the saved instance state come from?
It's a part of the Android.
Yeah, it's on create.
On create.
It's if the has been recreated.
So if this is the second time it's been created.
In Android, whenever you rotate screen,
Mm-hmm.
the class instance reinitializes.
Yep.
And on create, it's called a new. So a way to deal with that is to use a dongle and get the previous instance. So
Yep.
saved instance does not equal nil. That's actually correct.
Yeah.
In that way.
Right. So it is that this is a rotation rather than a startup.
Yeah.
Is
so
basically
something
what that's
changed.
saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is not initiated. This is not a.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
This is not a true on create. This happens to be the on create because I've rotated.
Yeah.
So I've already got. So I don't have to actually do any
Yeah.
processing because I've already got everything sorted. Right. That could have a comment.
Yeah.
So yeah. Just to make because yeah, two true things, then you exit. So so even if it was just yes. Yeah. On like. not a true. This would say it's not a real on create.
But it should be an on resume anyways, I think. Because even if you restart activity, I think you have another function.
You get called from the on resume rather than the on create.
Yeah, one of those.
I think Android always calls the on create when you rotate the screen. Once the rotation changes, its place.
Right.
Calls them great whenever you have to redraw the view.
Because you might have to recreate a new view if you're adjusting what's shown according to portrait or landscape. So it treats it as a create because of the layout issues. Yeah. Okay. But no, okay, that's fine. That's yeah, no, that's good. So that's all good. I was just thinking, yeah, two nils. Yeah, made me think that. But no, that's right. Okay. And yeah, go back to the other code now. Thing I saw that was, you also had some interesting stuff in there. So carousel. So yes, good long a bunch of comments here because it's doing a bunch of stuff. So set maximum images number. Okay, so the array length is greater than the maximum images.
Yeah, sometimes it can be too many images and we don't need to show that many because it will just flood the carousel view of the images.
Right.
And then there's another problem that there's sometimes in the extended version there's no images, but in the small version there is one because I think that's a requirement. So if there are none in the gallery, we just pick the one so we at least just have an image of the product.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this particular use case here, so arraying is coming from this gallery array length.
Yeah.
You're checking and you set the string to being the maximum number of images it can be. And then you do, if it's greater than 0, set it as, otherwise set it to 1. See, you don't use array length anywhere else. This array len. Is there a for loop? You're using here if it's greater than 0, because do you use it in, so if you use it here, if it's not max images, then do that, else break. Okay, so this feels like, so this bit here, this check, is because you don't reset array length here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you could do is you could actually, instead of so instead of actually doing this test and checking it here and then doing the test again here,
You just have it there.
you could just set this as array length equals max images, and then so what I'd almost do is I'd say this bit clamps array length, because you've got this one which is array length. If it's the array length is 0, you set it the string to 1 anyway, right? Because that's where you're going to get the image from the other location. And so when it's 1, so if this array length is, so it's there. This is where you do the getting the default one from the other location.
But then there will just be one image because there's always one image.
Yeah. Do you always want to add that image, or do you only ever want to do it if there's no other image available?
Only them.
Right. Because it's a bad image.
Yeah, it's also usually lower quality, but it's fine for a mobile display.
Okay.
Because you see there we can pick the different resolution of the big image, so we have the high one there.
Right.
And there's just one standard quality for the standard one in the small information space for the product.
Okay, so cognitively there's a couple of ways of dealing with this particular situation, right? So one way is you have your image URL array, right? And what you do is, if you know that there is a requirement for this one to exist, you set the first one to being this one.
Yeah.
And then you look at your array length. If it's 0, you don't overwrite it. If it's not 0, you overwrite that first one. Right? So this one is always, so what happens is this one goes in very first. Right? Because you say it's always there, so I'm always going to do it. So I put it in position 0. And then I go through my list of images from the detailed ones. If there happens to be some images there, I will start overwriting, and I'll overwrite that one as being the first thing I overwrite. Right, do you know what I mean? See if I can draw it. So what you do is so you've got this array, right, which has a 0, 1. Okay. I put the default immediately in here, right? So it has the low quality bad image. Then I go and have a look at the detailed file and go, oh, you've got 3 images. I put the first one in there, the second one there, third one there. So if there happens to be an image, I always overwrite that first one.
Yep.
But I initialize the image array with it, which means if I look at another file and it has no images, that low quality one is left there as the first item.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of initializing it with the default and then updating it if I find images. So that would be one, that's one way of thinking about it. Another way, this array length, you could have a section here which would cap it to being max images, and then you wouldn't need this particular test case here, because array length itself would have been changed. So you won't hit this break, you will just go to the length. So you get rid of this complexity and just say I go to array length because I set my array length to be maximum that. And that means you don't have these two, you don't have this one and this one. You only have the second one because that's always going to be capped to the right length. Alright, so where that logic fits, that would decrease your cyclometric complexity. Linking back to the earlier discussion, because here you've got multiple paths through this, whereas by capping it, you decrease the number of paths, so you decrease the complexity. So you get that from the array length of the number there, that goes to there. And this is just from a different default URL. Now, I'm just trying to think if there's a nicer way of doing that. But yeah, I'd at least change that to 1 capping. Yep.
Regarding r length, the variable, wouldn't it be easy to just use URL array.length, since that will always reflect the correct length?
It's to set the length of the array after we know the length of it, because there can be 3 things. It can either be longer than 10, that it's a max.
Yeah, after the if.
Yeah, so
I'm thinking here, I'm just dropping this, and I use it here. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So you're saying to change rlen with gallery.length? Or do you mean the length of this string? Oh, this URL array?
Because you do cap it up here, right?
Yep.
Doing so, the length of this will always be correct according to this section.
Yep.
So
it's different because this one gets set to 1.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right. So this test needs to be about the original length, because this test is about looking at what images might come in. Right.
So if you had 2 options, or just 2 things that could happen, then it could be much simpler. But it's the third one that makes it a little bit more.
So that's why I was thinking of doing this default kind of activity, because what if instead you did image URL array 0 equals 0 equals this, right? And you did that first.
I also think I can just set it to 10 from the start and just see if just set in the default image, and if there is no images in the array that's with the extra, you will just check if the next one is null, and then if it is, you just have a single one.
Right. Well, so I mean, you something you don't even need to do that, right? I think you can, if you set this, if this line moves up to here, right? And you set or rather you set the size to being well, because it's a dynamic array allocation in Java, you can append to an array.
Not a primitive.
No, not a primitive array, only a
list or
yeah.
list.
Yeah.
But you've got a max images thing here anyway.
Yeah.
right? So you could just set it always to max images, because you're probably not saving that much space by saving some strings. So if you just set it to max images, set the first one always to being the default, then do this check here, and just, you know, for I equals 0 to this check, allocate them into the 10.
Yeah.
And then if they're still null, don't display them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you might get rid of most of this logic, in fact. Yep. So that would improve the code.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So we can probably get one more bit of code we can look at, or does someone else want to show quickly off any code?
I have a code that I can show. No, I don't know.
We only got 5 minutes left. But yeah, so it's again about, like, does this match up with what we think about what we're trying to achieve with the code, right? And I think that's one of the I think if you say there's a default gets put in first, and then I overwrite the default. I also think this feels like it's optimizing to save space.
Yeah, I think that looks just. When I look at that myself, I think it doesn't look good.
No, I think it doesn't look good. And I would generally not try and save this space, because it doesn't, like, what you're saving, because max image is like 10, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So saving 9 strings is not that much memory. Hopefully you're not pressed that much for memory, because if you are, you can't load any images. So I wouldn't even worry about trying to trying to do that optimization. I just say I have an images, I put the default one in, I then overwrite the default with the other images if they exist. And you'd get a much simpler function. Cool. Okay. Any other questions? No, right. So I've been asked to write up a bit more about what's expected in the professional programming .markdown file. And one of the questions was, different members of the group want to have different repos or have like different parts of different repos. If you have individual work that you want to talk about, use professional programming.yourname.md. Right, so then I can look for you in that repo, right? So if you're submitting the repo like all together as, we did this, and you can have just one big markdown that it's all together, that's fine. But if you want to separate it out, put your username, and it's best if I have like a username that I can identify. So either your actual name, just a gamer tag is not going to help me much, because tracking you down from your gamer tag could actually take me a while. But username's usually quite useful. Like your email address username for the university, that works quite well, because it's short and generally ASCII characters, so that would be good. And just professional programming .that.md and upload that to Blackboard. Now the question was also
did upload a PDF in Blackboard that links to the repository.
Yes, with links to where those .markdown files are.
Does someone say something about putting it in the README file in the repository?
You can also put it in a README, but I need to be able to get to it, right? So the faster you can get me there, the easier it is, right? I'm not going to quite grade like one of my professors graded, and I don't know if I told you this story, but one of my graphics professors, he graded according to, if everything worked, you got 100%. And then if there are errors, the longer it took him to find it, the more marks you lose. So I could do that, right? So he goes, right, you've got like 45 minutes to convince me, right? And I'm going to start the time as soon as I click on, and any time it takes me to find where you put stuff is time you don't get to convince me of things. That would be a different way of grading. Like, you've got 30 minutes to convince me. And I'm going to stop after 30 minutes. So if you haven't convinced me by then, you're in trouble. So, which would be that would be a bit harsh.
Yeah, but a rule of thumb is you don't want to make the person grading you unhappy, sad, miserable.
Yeah, don't piss us off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make it easy.
Money on the top. Bribery is also a problem. So I actually think we all would have to. No, yeah, my career isn't worth any amount of money you pay me. So yes, I think it would be a career-ending activity to take money from students to grade better. They even worry about like taking bottles of wine and stuff, right? So I think in New Zealand there was actually kind of the yes, if a student buys you a gift like a bottle of wine to say, you know, thanks for being the lecturer, you actually have to donate it to the department, and the department gets to decide how it distributes that, because it doesn't want to have individual lecturers receiving gifts from individual students of any kind. So, though I think you might in Norway get away with giving flowers because they're worthless. You're like, what do I do with flowers, right? They're all going to die. So, bottle of wine, you know, I can have. Yeah, but yeah. So basically, I'm saying don't buy me a bottle of wine, because yeah. But
I think some places are operating with if you get a gift that's worth more than a certain number,
and it's a certain amount of money.
Yeah, then you need to donate it that way or something.
Right. So do you guys know that amount of money? Is it like 100 krona? Because then a bottle of wine would be probably more. Well, actually, no. You could buy me cheap wine. Might be an insult. I found this really cheap wine for you. Thanks. Okay. Have a great weekend. Good luck with your writing up. You've got 3 weeks.
Yep. I was just wondering, the SMD file.
Yes.
You mean that that's supposed to be in the repository for a bachelor project, right?
That would be.
No, because the issue is that we're not using Git.
Okay.
Yeah, we're hosting our own Perforce server, so.
Yep.
Yeah, so it doesn't have like any public access point. To like go to our server with a user.
So
we create. So
if you create me a server, that would be nice.
Yeah, I could just set up a user.
That would be my preference, is for you guys to set up a read access server. And you can time limit me, so I can only grade you during a certain period if you want to line limit it. So I can also I can sign an NDA if you want me to sign an NDA, then I won't.
No, that's not an issue.
Trust me, I will steal the code.
I think we can trust you there. Just like to access it, you're going to need like a visual client thing. You can't just like, it's not a browser thing.
We will set those up. Yeah, do that. And I'll set those up with, because Jason will be my server. I think it would be useful to have an ED and you could have the root one has it's going to be a PDF with explaining these are the repos and these are the information. We do this and this one, we do this and this one, we do this additional if there is something that you can do that in any of the repos, then yes, certainly I'll separate and put it in there. So that's fine. But most code discussion if there is a reason why you don't want to go with the code, for example, you said rather people didn't know how we how bad it was, or how we refactored it, or some of the security or broken bits of it. So yes, you could decide to keep that section. And the upload that is actually attached to this repo. Usually that's not the case.
Will you just add a few files saying specific sections of the what you're looking for?
somewhere along that border.
So that was the reason I said, so I'll do some more clarification on that.
Because I think those are just finding the proper rules for what to expect from the group.
Yeah, so we can do it as a group, and I do expect in the markdown an individual section within that, if you're doing this as a single file as a group.
Yeah.
I still expect some individual sections in it, so you can say what you want to do and what you can do. But if you're quite radically different, it doesn't make sense to me to use a file.
Because we have been working on the same project, but we've been all over the place.
Yeah, so if it's all working together, then that makes sense for it to be together.